and it's saying 20 foot more, my question would be, regardless of her answer, if that means you would change that setback to 20 foot from 10, would you guys have a problem with that setback being 20 foot?
For those two lots.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would
Yeah.
be difficult for us. 15 foot we could do, and
Yeah.
still have our building footprint.
Director.
So the baseline setback along the side that's adjoining the street is 20.
Baseline setback
When I say
regardless.
baseline, I mean if this was a local street, it'd be 20. It'd be 20 feet, it wouldn't be 10.
So in other words, no matter what, minimum is still gonna be
Then it's gonna be 20 regardless.
20, it's gonna be 20
of
regardless.
If this is considered side or front.
So if, depending on how you interpret this, I think we need to discuss how to interpret it. Depending on how you interpret it, if let's say the arterial is 100 feet wide, and I'd be surprised if it's 100 feet wide, honestly. If it's 100 feet wide, that's 50 feet from center, plus the setback, that means 70 feet from center line.
No,
And that-
Well, we already know it's 60 on our side. We already know that by the
Surveyed.
preliminary plat.
Right.
The preliminary plat says it's 60 from center?
Yeah, it says it right there, 60 point something from section line.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean the center line of the right
It's
of
not,
way.
yeah.
Yeah, most generally,
68 and a half for the total right of way.
most generally. it is.
68 and a half.
For the total right of way, not
No,
for half.
that's from, if I'm reading this right, that section line right there, that's a section corner. So
Right.
that's the section line.
Yeah, but it's
You're
not,
measuring from that to the right of way.
but that's not 68. It's 68 from here.
No, this is the section line. This is the section corner right here. That's the section line.
Right.
So somewhere in there, it's saying 68 point something feet. I just can't read it because it's so small.
Is Jennifer able to blow this up so we can see it?
Yeah, let me share my screen. I have the preliminary plat up here. Oops. Oops. All right, here we go. Do you all see that? Zoomed in enough?
Better.
That's
You
much
see
better.
what I'm talking about there, Commissioner Crawley?
That's the total,
That's the
68
total.
and
The
a half.
total,
Yep.
68.
Yeah.
Yeah.
68.5.
And one thing I'll point out is it looks like the center line of the right-of-way, it says center line though, right? It says center line, not the center line of the roadway. Okay, never mind, excuse me.
Well, okay.
I really think, for the developers, I think it would be in your best interest for us to continue it to our study session, discussion of this to our study session before we make a recommendation, so we can get clarification on that, because you may want some time to talk then to your engineering staff and do something a little different. Is that amenable to you all, or what would you, if you'd like to come forward and discuss it with us a little more? We certainly don't want to put you in a position where we're creating something that doesn't work for you.
Yeah, I think based on the information that's been shared and to try to get some clarification on these setbacks, if we can take action at the next study session, we've been through the public hearing piece, then I think that we would be amenable to that.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'm sorry that I asked the question, but I'm glad that I asked it now instead of somebody bringing it up after we'd finalized the plat.
Right, no, I appreciate that.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. And so we'll continue the discussion to our study session, which is on the 30th, June the 30th at noon, and we'll hopefully have it all clarified by then.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right, item number 2 is a conditional use permit to allow a two-family dwelling in an R1 residential district generally located at 809 South Willow Street in Ottawa, Kansas. And I'll open the public hearing, and will Jennifer or
I will be making a brief
All right.
presentation on this
Okay.
item, and there's some PowerPoint slides here. So this was discussed at the study session, May 26th study session. It's a conditional use permit for a duplex at 809 South Willow Street. Next slide, please. So this is located at 809 South Willow Street. It's one block south of 8th Street on the east side of Willow. The zoning is R1. In the R1 district, a single-family residence is allowed by right. A conditional use permit requires conditional, or excuse me, a duplex requires a conditional use permit. So that's why we're considering this tonight. Next slide, please. Okay.
would you guys like me to turn down the lights again? Can you see that okay? We get kind of a glare from.
Let me know which slide you want.
The second one is fine for now. You can start there. And we can use that view if you want, John. You don't have to go to the full screen view if you're having difficulty doing that. So that's fine, that'll work.
Yeah.
So, this is located in an area that's zoned R1. The surrounding properties are zoned R1, and there are single-family dwellings. This lot has been vacant with no buildings on it since 1992. The utilities are there to serve the site. Next slide. So this is just a vicinity map showing where it's located. Next slide. This is the proposed duplex. The left side is a photo of a similar one or the same model built somewhere else. One thing you'll notice here is each unit has a front porch, covered front porch. It has some articulation with some masonry post supports. And each unit has a one-car garage and a parking space in front of the garage. On the right side of that screen, it's hard to read it, but that's the site plan. The site plan complies with all minimum required building setbacks. So you can see there's a very large rear yard associated with this. Next slide, please. So the findings are all in your report. I would prefer not to go through each one. I'll be happy to do that if you want me to. But they are in the report. I can kind of summarize what I consider the key factors, the key findings, and I'll do that right now. The proposed duplex, it has an attractive design that includes a front porch, or excuse me, each unit includes a front porch, and the garages are set back more than 6 feet behind the front facade. The design is compatible with surrounding development. The site is suitable for the proposed use. It complies with all required building setbacks, and it meets the density standard for the block and the facing block. One thing that's required for a duplex, a conditional use permit for a duplex in the R1 district, is that you employ a density standard that's based on the half of the facing block and the entire block on which the duplex is located. And this easily meets that density standard, that density threshold. That density threshold, I'm gonna have to refer to the report, because I don't want to just base it on memory. But what this says is that for the duplex to be approved, the resulting calculation of dwelling units per square footage shall not be less than the minimum lot area for single-family dwellings in the R1 district, which is 7,000 square feet. Based on the information available, staff's analysis concludes the density is 12,000 square feet per unit, and thus this meets the standard. The design features of the duplex, including the front porches and garages, surpass what is required for a single-family residence, which is a use by right under this R1 zoning. So, for example, if this was a single-family dwelling, we would not be holding a hearing, we would not be notifying anybody, we would not have to publish a notice. It would be a use by right. They're required to have 2 parking spaces. They're not required to have a garage, and there's no design standard that says that the building has to have a front porch or any other embellishment on the facade. Additionally, Ottawa's comprehensive plan supports development of affordable and appropriate housing for all segments of the community. So those are what staff considers to be the key factors in this case, but the analysis of all the factors has been done, and that's in the report. And I'll be happy to take any questions you have. Okay. Thank you.
All right, is the developer or the builder here wish to speak to this? If he isn't, if they aren't, then we will turn the lights back on, and we'll ask for if there's any public comment on this. And again, we'd remind you to come to the mic, state your name and address, and your...
Excuse me.
Somehow I got nominated to go first here, so. Good evening. My name's Clark Ryan, and we own the property at 803 South Willow, which is the property to the north of the proposed duplex. First, I want to thank all of you for letting us speak our perspective of the proposed project. And we definitely hope that our point of view will be taken with as much or more consideration than the builder due to the personal vested interest in the immediate effects it will have on our quality of living. That said, I don't want there to be any confusion in the fact that we do oppose the project. We've owned the property for over 20 years. One of the desirable qualities of this location was the fact that it did have the vacant lot beside it, and we didn't have to live in unnatural conditions of another home being right on top of us. To say that we were surprised at the notification of a proposed duplex would be quite an understatement. When we purchased our property, the owner of the vacant lot stopped in and asked if we wanted to buy the lot. She had retained it in order to build a duplex at that time for her and her aging mother, but was denied the opportunity to build by the city, stating that the lot was too small to put housing on the property. Therefore, that's why she wanted to sell it to us. At that given time, we couldn't commit to the purchase, but over the years, we have tried multiple times to purchase the property, and after researching that with the city, we've been denied the ability to put up an outbuilding or to fence it due to access or the need of access by the city to a power pole at the back of the lot. We've also offered to leave it vacant and purchase the property and receive maybe possibly some type of tax break to leave it vacant for city access. So far, all inquiries have always been denied, so to be notified that a local builder is going to receive a tax break and build where others have been denied is quite frankly a slap in the face. With the proposed construction, I also would like to address a couple of the staff findings that was published on the May 26th study session. The first one, whether approval of the conditional use permit would be consistent with the intent and purposes of these regulations. While the staff has stated that the proposed two-family dwelling is consistent with the intent and purpose of the zoning, this, in our opinion, is not necessarily the case. The entire block consists of single-family homes, and a duplex is not in character with the neighborhood. Second one, whether the location of the proposed use is compatible to other land uses in the surrounding neighborhood. The staff also found that this was compatible due to the immediately surrounding area of the subject site being composed primarily of single-family homes. So primarily is somewhat of an understatement and is skewed so that the project seems like it could proceed without impediment. The entire block and those around it are single-family homes, and a duplex, again, is not in character with the neighborhood and does not provide any benefit to the residents or the community in the immediate vicinity. The third item, which states about putting an undue burden on the existing infrastructure, the staff found that the proposed duplex can be served by the utilities that are already there. However, maybe stormwater drainage was not taken into account because currently storm drains can't even accommodate the existing runoff under the existing conditions. With the increase of impervious surfaces, the street is going to be more flooded than what it already is. And additionally, the surrounding neighbors of the community, just in Ottawa in general, that's had similar type, developments built, are already complaining about their property flooding. And the reason that is because in most cases, the builders are bringing in infill material, building these up, and it's sloping and draining water more so into the neighbors' yards and into the basements. With that being said, at most, we would like to request that some type of third-party engineer perform some type of drainage study to ensure that either adequate drainage is addressed or and that's incorporated into the site plans. Whether the proposed use is made necessary or desirable because of changing conditions. From our perspective, the proposed use is not desirable for the area. It's a benefit. It's not a benefit for the community due to an already high density of people. Now, it might not meet the calculations that you guys proposed, but from a residential perspective of us that live there, it's pretty doggone, it's a high density. And again, it's still not in the character of the neighborhood. As far as the length of the time the subject properties remained vacant, well, the property didn't have to remain vacant as long as it has. The vacancy has been the result of the city for the past 20 years. We could have gladly purchased that and put something on it a long time ago. In regards to the property being suitable for the conditional use, building a structure within 12 feet of a property line is not suitable living conditions and is not, again, in character with the age of the neighborhood where most of the homes are surrounded with a larger lot and more room. Seventh item, whether the proposed conditional use would be in conformance to and further enhance the implementation of the city's comprehensive plan. I've read some of the planning documents in the comprehensive plan, and it states numerous statistics with minimal planning involved. The planning statements that are provided are fairly vague and essentially accommodates anything at the discretion of the city. Priority in this case should be given to the existing residents of the area. The proposed use is not desirable from our perspective, and many of the surrounding residents, whether here or not tonight. Again, we'd like to say that it's not in character of the neighborhood, which conflicts in general with the city's comprehensive plan. Finally, whether the proposed conditional use, if it complies with all the conditions with the approval is made contingent, will it be adversely affect the property in the area affected? decreased property value due to multi-family type housing is definitely a concern, but more so adjacent property flooding is the bigger concern at this point. And at a minimum, again, we'd like to emphasize the need for a drainage study and a site civil engineering plan to be prepared by a non-biased third-party engineering firm. And to end my concerns, I'd like to express that we could concede to a single-family home that's built in character with the existing neighborhood that might not impinge upon neighboring property lines, and that drainage be adequately built to prevent flooding on our property and the other neighbor's property. Again, in reality, multi-family housing is not in the interest, benefit, or character with the neighborhood. And to end, I guess, my plea, if you will, I'd like to leave you with a thought by the famous entrepreneur and author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Mr. Robert Kiyosaki. He says, if your business or community is to grow and prosper as a leader, you need to focus on people development, not housing development. And thank you guys for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Before we ask anybody else to come up, we'd like to make a note that Commissioner Kane has joined us in person. He's been on Zoom the whole time and finally made it to Ottawa, so thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
And so who would like to speak next?
Hello, I'm Nancy Layhew. I live at 808 South Willow, which is directly across from the northern unit of this proposed duplex. I've been there for approximately 16 years. This neighborhood is a very quiet, established neighborhood, which is exactly what all of us are seeking when we moved here. All the residents are single-family homes. Adding a duplex is potentially disruptive, especially if you get in a situation where you have multiple roommates. And I know you can't control the type of residents that are in there. The proposed style also does not fit the neighborhood, because although they're eclectic types of home in our neighborhood, they're all early to mid 1900s. A slab-built dwelling with no foundation and no basement does not fit in with the rest of the houses. Everything else is on a basement or a foundation, and they are raised, which we all have our raised French porches, which are great. We love them. I realize you have to meet with ADA, but that's, certainly adding a ramp is not out of the question. While I know the duplex meets the city standard for parking, it doesn't meet the neighborhood standard. Willow Street is extremely narrow as far as when you're considering parking on one side. And a duplex with a single garage and one parking space behind it lends to someone parking on the street because they're using the garage for storage. They have a truck that doesn't fit in the garage. They get tired of shuffling cars all the time, or possibly the kids are playing in the driveway. So that would lead to one car being on the street, potentially two if you throw in another roommate or a teenage driver. So you could have as many as 4 additional cars parked on the street that is already too narrow to accommodate the traffic. This is the narrowest part of Willow Street. And although parking's allowed on one side, it does cause problems and safety issues. It blocks the line of sight for the neighbors directly on either side. It makes it difficult to access and exit from the properties across the street, especially when you're talking some of the larger vehicles, service vans, and that sort of thing. It also creates a bottleneck on Willow Street. There's not room for 2 cars to pass when you have a car parked on one side. And any delivery vehicle, trash truck, service vehicle, or an ambulance stopped on the west side would shut down the whole street. And unfortunately, an ambulance, it's not a rare occurrence in our neighborhood. Willow's not an ordinary residential street. It has become a through street for traffic from 7th Street to 15th. It's not recognized as that, but the neighbors all realize just how much traffic is there. I counted the cars on 3 different occasions, just ordinary weekdays. On the 7th, or I'm sorry, on the 1st of June, that's a Wednesday, from 7:45 to 8:45, normal weekday evening, we had 51 vehicles in that hour. On Thursday, the 2nd of June, from 5 to 6, 155 vehicles passed on Willow Street. And then Tuesday, the 7th, I counted 15 minutes because I was leaving. We had 41 vehicles in 15 minutes. Now, traffic is pretty much continuous on the weekends. So we're talking a real hazard when we get cars parked on that one side of the street. And that's a very real possibility with the duplex. I think you'd say all the neighbors have widened or lengthened their driveways to allow for extra parking. There's no such option with this duplex. There's no place to put another car. So, then you take the school year and you're adding more traffic because people do drop their kids off for the bus stop. Plus, you're adding pedestrian traffic on 8th Street. I'd hate to see, a serious accident or injuries due to someone trying to come around a car that's parked. When there have been cars there have been numerous times they have been hit. Fortunately, they've been minor accidents or, the car's been empty and like that. So I feel like that's a major drawback for locating a duplex on this site. We simply cannot take the extra traffic or the bottleneck, which I can assure you would occur because they would be parking on the street. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak?
Mike Horn, 3840 Labette Road. First off, kudos to both what they said. I 100% agree with both of them. I own a house to the south. I also own a house to the north, 2 doors down on the corner. I own 3 other properties in the neighborhood. Talked to all the tenants that I currently have. Several of them are long-term tenants that have been there anywhere from 10 to 20 years, and they all agree that the traffic is way too heavy to accommodate that much more traffic. I totally agree with her as far as parking on the street. Nobody does it really because it is dangerous. I go over there to do maintenance or to mow a yard, and it's dangerous when I park on the street there. You can't hardly get out of the car because everybody's running really, really fast through there all the time. Like I said, till you get up to 9th Street or 10th, nobody parks in the street because it's just way too much traffic, and the street's not wide enough. Other concerns would be pretty much like they said. Don't fit with the neighborhood. A duplex doesn't fit, with the existing houses that are there. I personally think that there's way too many houses in the neighborhood now. No matter what the density study says for the streets that are there and the houses that are there, there's just way too much in that area. Parking's going to be, like I said, that was one of my other concerns, is the parking. And, we're talking about 6 bedrooms on this duplex in a 70-foot wide piece of property, somewhere around in there. 6 bedrooms. I totally agree with him. Put up a 2-bedroom house. Put up a 3-bedroom house. You'll have a lot more parking. It'll fit in the neighborhood much better. And the second with him on the drainage is it's going to be an issue. Seen that street flood many times. I've had my basement next door flood because storm drains back up and comes right back up to the drain pipes. Because there's not adequate drainage over there. So, I guess that's about all I got too. So, thank you.
All right. Anyone else wish to speak?
Yes. And like he said, kudos to them, because I mean, I don't think I could say it any better. My name is Diana Jameson, and my sister Patricia and I purchased the house at 804 South Willow less than a year ago. And part of the reason we like that neighborhood is because it is quiet. I moved from Oak Street over by the university, and believe you me, the apartment building on the corner where the university houses some of their people is a nightmare. Tenants in and out, and nobody's quiet, nobody cares. But to get to this situation too, is they're right. A slab home, duplex, there's no house like that in the neighborhood. I mean, it would just look odd. And I'm not saying it's not a tasteful design, but it doesn't fit into where this neighborhood is. And the drainage situation, I only thought about the street because of the fact that we live on the corner, and when it rains a lot, you just pull up to that corner and you got to make sure you come to a complete stop because there's so much water there. And the narrowness of the street, you have to make sure that you come to a complete stop and make sure nobody's coming, because if somebody's coming, you don't want to turn. And the runoff with the two houses on both sides of that, with a house like that, water going down, where else is it going to go but in this person's basement and this person's basement? So that's not, something has to be done about that if you're putting anything in there. And I didn't realize it was going to be a 3-bedroom. 2 3-bedrooms. I thought it was going to be 2 2-bedroom ones. That makes it even worse, because how is the design on those driveways going to fit 3 cars? It can't do it. That design for this sort of situation is not feasible, because you've got people back to back, and then who wants to leave first? The car in the garage may need to leave, and the other 2, where are they going to go? They're going to get tired of parking behind them, and then they're going to park in the street, which is definitely dangerous. And then you're just counting cars of the people living there. What about people who come to visit? Holidays. Then you've got the whole street lined up with cars. And then another thing is, what about the quality of the kind of people that are going to be moving in? When people rent, they have less responsibility of caring for their neighbor than if they were actually purchasing the home and they were going to be there for any length of time. And I agree with several of the people. If you want to put something there because this poor gentleman was not able to buy it, put in a single-family home. Then you've got your problem solved. You've got hopefully affordable housing, and I'm not quite so sure. Nobody mentioned what rent was going to be in this affordable housing. There's not much affordable housing in Ottawa right now, period, but if you're buying new, you're building new, and you're going to try to put people, 2 families in there, it's going to be expensive.
If we could get back on the findings, that's what the builder or the developer or the owner wants to charge for rent.
Right, but
that's
he
up to them.
used the word affordable housing.
Well, but
So-
affordable, but so you understand, there's 2 types of affordable. There's a government definition of affordable, and then there's for affordable for the workforce with a small a, and I think what he was referring to was affordable for the workforce, which is a different meaning. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Well, I
for
know
you.
that when I sold my house, a landlord wanted to buy it, and he was going to charge $1,500 a month, and he said that was affordable housing. It's like, no, that's not affordable housing for anybody. But he said it the best. I'm sorry. I just don't think it's a good idea to put it there. Thank you for listening.
Anyone else?
I would like to add one thing real quick.
If you would like to add something, walk to the microphone, state your name, and say what you'd like to say.
Mike Horn again. I just wanted to add that we need to recognize too that there is not alley access to this property. Okay? There is no alley access, correct?
Right. Okay.
All right, okay. So that,
Hello and good evening. My name is Louise Ryan. My family and I have owned 803 South Willow for 20 years. I have to say I'm shocked to be standing before you today. I never dreamed the city of Ottawa would want to consider a duplex next to my centennial home. We moved to KCK in January of 2001. We desperately hated the city. We wanted to find a place to raise our children that was similar to a town that we grew up in. We found better in Ottawa. We love Ottawa. To say that this is emotional is an understatement. While I will concede a new single home dwelling on the property to the south of ours with much anguish, as we have tried for years to buy the property that was originally a part of our property. But the city would not cut current residents the same tax deals those awarded to construction companies. However, a duplex is a punch in the gut. This is so very emotional. And again, we chose our home based on there are no multi-family units on our block and is not new development. We lived in married student housing in college. We checked that experience off. We do not choose to go back in time. A multi-family dwelling you could allow forces more cars to an already congested area, especially in an emergency. Our street cannot handle additional stormwater runoff. More concrete to absorb heat to reflect on our home, raising our energy costs, and more people to argue who parked in the wrong spot. I genuinely hope you will deeply allow my statement to resonate, as it is our lives on the 800 block of Willow that you will be forever impacting, not yours. I thank you for your time, and I leave you with this quote from Jurassic Park. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Thank you again, and I genuinely appreciate your time.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the issue? Before we close the public hearing, just to recap, you have traffic concerns. But would anybody who's complained to the Public Works Department about parking on the street, please raise your hand?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Have you complained about parking on the street to the?
Would we have any complaints?
No, have you?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes.
And so then stormwater runoff is an issue. I've driven down the street, so I think we all have, so we know. And you're worried about density and style. Those are the four things you're worried about. Does anybody on the block have a historic home
Security,
registered?
security.
Security, yes, security.
There was some
Does
solid
anybody on the
security.
block have a home that's registered with the National Historic Society?
I don't think ours is registered, but I'm sure it could be, because it was
But
built
it's
in
not.
1910. That's right.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Could be eligible.
Okay, anyone else wish to speak at the public hearing? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing, and I'll open it for staff discussion. And has Jennifer left the? Has she left? Okay, all right, so, Mr. Hall, do you have anything you want to address there?
I don't have anything to add unless there are questions. I think,
Okay, I do.
I think they made some respectful, raised some valid concerns.
I do have questions myself. So just a little. I had other questions, but the last speaker kind of helped me understand this a little bit more. So we've had a family who has tried to purchase the vacant land.
Sounds like multiple families have, right?
And multiple times. And a speaker earlier used these words that the city somehow impeded their ability to purchase. Was it because of the tax, that they couldn't give them the same tax considerations as maybe a builder coming in? Or, and then my other question would be, what about the person who owned the property? Was that person willing to sell, or what happened there?
I don't know the answers to those questions.
Okay.
I think that, I don't know what role the city would have in preventing someone from purchasing the property.
Okay.
someone made a comment about tax incentives, tax rebates. So it is in the neighborhood revitalization program area.
Sure.
So
Thank
if
you.
you're building improvements to the property, thank you. If you're building improvements to the property, if it's a qualifying improvement, it could receive there could be a tax rebate on that incremental increase in the value.
But you're not required to be a builder to get that, though.
That
No,
is correct. And
that
it
is correct.
passes, it's not going to the builder, it passes to whoever purchases the property.
It goes to the owner.
Correct. You don't have to be a
I just wanted to make
builder
sure
to
we
get
put
that.
that to the public here. so
The
they
new
understand
owner,
that.
not the
It
one
goes to
who's
the new
selling.
owner.
The
It
whoever
goes to
is.
whoever owns it.
Correct. So it'll go, the owner pays the taxes.
Correct.
Pays the
Okay.
property taxes. If it's a qualifying improvement, they get a tax rebate for as many as 10 years and for as much as 95%. And I don't know there's a breakdown, there's a formula, I don't know it without looking at the documents. But
Residential's 95% for the first 5 years, and then it scales back, I think, 20% a year for the next 5.
Thank you.
On a residential, in a residential area.
Yeah.
ENR.
So there could be some indirect role that has in preventing someone from purchasing. Someone made some comment about building an accessory structure, I believe. There could be an issue with that. I think there's a way to overcome that. So I don't understand the relevance of not being able to purchase the property to this case. That's just my opinion.
But is it okay for those who've tried to maybe answer the question? I know we've closed public comment.
I think
But can
I'd
we
like
have
to
the
have that
dialogue?
one person speak to
Yeah.
the controversy over the purchasing the property, I guess is the
Yeah.
best way to put that. So if you'd like to speak for the neighborhood or speak for whomever.
Maybe I'll stay. Okay, so.
Identify yourself again.
I'm
please, just
sorry.
for the record. That's
Clark
okay.
Ryan again, at 803 South Willow Street on the north side of the proposed duplex. I guess, so that I'm clear, can you please ask me again or state the question again? so
Yeah,
can-
I know there were several attempts
Mhm.
to purchase,
Yes.
and, but you were not able to make the purchase.
Mhm.
How were you impeded?
Okay.
From,
So, I guess the original opportunity or the opportunity to purchase the property, maybe I shouldn't say we weren't allowed, but maybe the proper way to put it is that in keeping with, wanting to use that property as an additional segment of what we already owned, because in essence, it was part of our property long before we purchased it. We used to have a lot of trouble with folks walking through the vacant lot and trespassing and among other things. So our goal was to, build an outbuilding to keep, lawn equipment, things of that nature, safe and, away from prying eyes and trespassing people. The second thing was to build a fence to keep those folks out. In inquiring to the city the requirements to build either of those structures on that lot, we were told that we would not be able to build those in order to allow access to the power pole at the back of the property. So from our perspective, there was no real reason to purchase a property if we couldn't, A, build any type of outbuilding to keep our stuff safe, or B, build a fence there to, keep folks out. So while we weren't truly, I guess, not allowed to buy it, I mean, there was no remote reason to purchase it if we couldn't use it, for our own,
Okay, can I ask a
safety
question
concern.
about that specific issue? Is there a power line that goes north and south behind these properties?
There is a power line that runs behind our property to the east, running north and south.
Yes.
So the easement for that power line would be behind your property, north and south. So there would be no easement for anyone to allow anyone to go across this
East-west.
lot to get to that easement, because the easement is in the back of the lots going south. So I don't understand that comment about someone saying you couldn't
Yep.
build on here because that's the access, because the access is in
Sure.
the back of your lot.
You know, and that's an excellent point, and to address that, the city, we actually had I mean, maybe you could consider it a historic fence from way back in the early 1900s when our home was a farmstead, and they requested that be cleaned out, and actually the neighbors behind us cleaned that out and removed the fence without permission, which is a separate issue. But nonetheless, they cleaned that out. We built our current fence off the property line to allow that easement and that access back through there. And I had actually told the city originally, I said, you know, why do you need access along the back of our fence when you can access it through the lot?
Well, see, there's a difference there. When you say, why do you need that? Because you can access it from the lot, that's you saying that, not the city saying
No,
that they have to go across.
Right,
that
I
property.
understand, where I was going with that was then later on, where they said they wanted the access along the power line, and we approached the city about access to purchasing the lot and building and that, which I've already explained. They essentially said the same thing that I had originally said about using the lot, and said that they needed it for access. So in essence, they informed us that they needed not only access along the back of our property line under the power lines, but then when we wanted to purchase the lot and put a fence there, they then needed access to that power pole through the vacant lot. So there was quite an indecisive nature coming from information coming from the city on how they were wanting to access that pole. Either way, it was quite a discouragement from our ability to, to push our fence back, or to purchase the property and build a fence there. So, does that make sense?
Yeah, and for that to happen, there would be a requirement of some type of easement to go across this property, and I would hope that the developer, before he got this deep, he would have title work done, which would determine if there was an easement across this property or not. So I would assume by this being in front of us that there is no easement that allows anyone to go across that property to the easement.
I couldn't answer that question. I don't own the lot, so I don't know whether or not there's an easement or not. All I can say is we've been discouraged from both the east and the south side of the property due to the city saying that they needed access to that same power pole.
Just in the past, just for clarification, because a couple of us have done this for quite a while, there was a former administration in the community development department. They did not allow auxiliary structures to be built on lots that had a separate legal description without within a year they needed to build a dwelling on there. They just wouldn't allow you to go in and build a garage next to your house on a separate lot. That was their determination. From what I'm hearing from, not that it makes any difference now, but from what I'm hearing from Director Hall, there might be a way now to do that. But that's probably the word you would have gotten back then, was it's not allowed, because it just wasn't allowed.
Would there never have been a provision that would allow property that was originally part of our lot to be incorporated into the existing lot?
Yeah, you could do, I kind of sort of disagree with what he's saying, because if you combine the two legal descriptions together, you have one lot now.
But
So
you
that
have to
could be
replat
done.
it. But you have to replat it. In order to combine the legal descriptions, you have to replat it. So
No, in a subdivision like this, these are already separate lots, so what you're doing is combined in the legal descriptions. Because these are original
Well,
city
I've
lots.
actually done it, Bill, and you do have to do a replat to do that, because you can't build it with the regulations as they were interpreted. I'm not saying that they were interpreted correctly, but you did have to have a replat to turn it all into one lot, because we've done it.
So essentially though, whether it could or couldn't be done, I mean, there was just a process, and
It sounds
you
like
really
you got
could-
misinformed, is what
That's
it
right.
sounds like to us, and I think we're, in our different ways, we're agreeing with you that possibly you got misinformed on whether you
Right.
could do it or not. Same way with the fence. You got misinformed on that, because if they don't have an easement, they can't drive across your property. There's a term for that we learned in law enforcement a long time ago. That's called trespass, and you can't trespass on
Right.
somebody else's property without their permission or in hot pursuit, so if you're law
Sure.
enforcement. So you just couldn't pull a power truck up there and go across that property. So I think it was either a combination of either misinterpretation or misinformation. That happened in the past, and that's not, I don't think that's germane to our issue here. So, but thank you for the clarification.
Sure,
on that.
yeah.
Okay.
Would y'all like me to pass this to someone?
Back to.
I thought it's in essence of saving time.
Yeah.
I think
Other-
for me, the question I have is, if someone was once denied the ability to build a duplex previously, why is this even up for consideration today?
Because it was 20 years ago and regulations change.
Yeah.
I think the density thing just came in about 8 years ago, 8 or
Okay.
9 years ago.
Yeah. But to his point is, yeah, so residents come in, people buy homes, people move in, knowing very well that, yeah, there's a history of people having been denied to build a duplex. So I feel at ease, I'm moving into the neighborhood. Lo and behold, you wake up 20 years later, now all of a sudden, people are allowed to build a duplex. I'm just putting myself in the residents' shoes, right? I purchased the property, there is a history that, okay, somebody tried to do something here and it was denied. Okay, good, so we know this is never gonna happen, right? I purchased this is the largest investment a family makes, is their home. And we make that investment. And, we wanted to do other things, couldn't do it for one reason or another. Okay, that's fine. Then all of a sudden, hey, somebody's coming to put a duplex on here. So I sympathize, I empathize with the residents in this case. I would say it's a series of unfortunate circumstances and misinformation, but it's real. It's what it's there right now, and I do, and there is something to be said for the statement that was made earlier about just because you can doesn't mean you should. This is not to say, the findings are wrong. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying, in good conscience, knowing the history and having heard the history today, and that's why we have a public hearing, so we can hear these things. This is the avenue that residents have. While at the same time, I'm wary of us not violating fair housing. Some of the comments I think kind of,
Absolutely.
yeah, we're violating fair housing. Yeah, put those comments aside. I have my struggles, just to tell you where I stand, especially with finding two, right? So what does it mean to say compatible to other land uses in surrounding neighborhood, right? And so if we say one, attractive facade, that's relative, to be honest with you. And are we talking about the look? And I'm thinking that the nature, these are historic homes that are there, right? Single-family homes. And a duplex is radically, well, I'm going to say radically, but it's different. It is different from the other homes, right? I just feel like to then say, it's the same thing, it's got an attractive facade, it's a residential district, check the box. I got some struggles there.
Commissioner Mays, you have any comments?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you on that. I would say the one comments here tonight, though, that I think is a detriment to what they're trying to accomplish here is the duplex is primarily a rental property. And we have someone here today.
We have a landlord who's.
A landlord that's here saying he doesn't want more rentals in the area, in a sense. What's that? No, I'm not done. Let me finish mine. I think there's a couple other points to it. When we're looking at, we've been talking about some setbacks and some different things as well on other lots throughout the city. I think when we go into historic neighborhoods like this, we really need to be aware of what we're allowing to be built. You don't want them built up against the property lines, and that's a big point of what I'm seeing around town, and I'm just not one to go in. I'm not a big fan of the duplexes going into some of these neighborhoods like this from day one. I know they're tastefully done, but I think they need to be put into areas kind of like up at Lincoln or out there behind the high school where they're bunched up amongst one another, and instead of some of our older neighborhoods with character, and you just throw one in there because it's new housing, which we desperately need. So it's kind of a double-edged sword for us here at the Planning Commission of what we're looking at and what we want. I think a lot of more discussion needs to be had on this type of development of what we want to do in the city.
I'm going to reserve my comments for a couple minutes. Either one of you guys want to?
No, I agree. I think it's wildly out of context with a historic neighborhood to put a duplex. But I also think any single-family dwelling you build there is going to be wildly out of context to what is already existing. I think it's a better option than putting a duplex. And certainly, I drive down that street probably 3 or 4 times a week, maybe more. And it's a one-lane traffic street. So that is, for me, is my biggest concern is, you add 6 bedrooms, you've got, say, 12 college students, all with cars. So it's very concerning. And not that it's gonna be college students living there, but
Right.
I'm just saying,
We can't go worst case scenario on everything, but we can be reality on everything. So, yeah.
Well, just like Mike said also, as far as the houses, someone could go, so the setbacks on the sides right now, you gotta think about, right now, they're built at 12 foot. Someone could go in there and build 6 foot from the property lines, build a bigger house.
Sure.
And not have any garage.
Yeah, I want to follow up on that because so you guys understand, single family, 6-bedroom, single family house with no garage, just exactly on a slab with no front porch. Could be built on there today, and the only thing they'd have to do is apply for a building permit, get a site permit, which might create more problems than this. Having said that, you guys brought up some really valid points. To see, the thing I think about is 2 more driveways exiting on that street. Because unlike, I think, one of the people who testified said that we don't park on that street. Well, I went down twice looking at the lot, just because that's what I do. One day there was 11 cars parked on one side of the street, and the other day there were 14 cars parked on the other side of the street. In a row. Yes, there were.
Not in that section.
Yes, there were. There were 11 cars parked down there. It's on Saturday morning. Now, there may have been a yard sale, I don't know. But it doesn't matter because there were people parked along there, and we're gonna add 2 more driveways, and we're gonna add 6 more bedrooms, and we're gonna add at least 4 more cars, and where are they gonna park? Because the design shows a single width driveway going to the garage. There's no way to have a 2-car wide pad there, or at least not on the design. The other thing I'd like to say, and this is for your information, for a number of years, the past director of community development has tried to get neighborhoods like yours to create what's known as a historic overlay district. So you can in that historic overlay district, and Director Hall could give a lot more information on that. You do have some design control over what goes into the neighborhood if there's a historic overlay district. Nobody in Ottawa's ever done that. Where the Victorian houses are, because they don't want the controls that come with that. They want to be able to do whatever they want to do with their property, but they don't want somebody else to come in and do what they want to do with their property. So there's been a lot of discussion on that. It just has never happened. And I'm not saying whether I'm a proponent or an opponent of that, but that's why. You say, oh, that's a great thing, until they say, yeah, but it controls what you do to your property too. So those, my concerns are 2 more driveways on a street that is narrow, and on the days I was down it, did have a lot of parking, and so that created a safety issue. The fact that, I'm talking about this on the next one we have, the ability to park cars in the parking spaces and not on the street is a real concern to me. So I have some I have some reservations as well, so what's next, guys?
Yeah. And then the stormwater, engineers may have looked at it, I don't know, but the residents' experience
But
is
that's not a
different.
requirement.
Unfortunately, it's not a but then it speaks to, just because you can, doesn't mean you shouldn't, right? Because the residents are experiencing something, right? And at some point, we have to strike a balance between just disregarding the fact that residents have made an investment. And I'm not saying we deliberately disregard them. I'm saying, our rules and our regulation allow for that to happen. But at what point do we strike a balance?
Well, we had the same discussion on Elm Street, the 300 block, 400 block of Elm, within the last 6 months.
Maple.
Maple, I'm
I
sorry.
bought the
Maple.
lot and built a
Yeah.
house.
Yeah, so,
Yeah,
because, and we
okay.
denied that one because it didn't fit into the character of the neighborhood, and almost all of the same issues that you all brought forward. We got to weigh that against the fact that we desperately need more housing in Ottawa. We desperately need more bedrooms in Ottawa. We desperately need more workforce in Ottawa. So, as Commissioner Wanika said, where do we strike that balance?
Mr. Chairman, can I make a couple comments?
Direct
So,
call.
one thing that will lead to more housing affordability if there is more housing supply, because it's supply and demand. Okay, so,
I've
just a
heard that
just a
before.
comment, you might have heard that before, right? In the real estate business. You have the options in making a recommendation of recommending that it not be approved, recommending it be approved as recommended, or recommending that it be approved with other conditions that aren't in the recommendation. If you add conditions, they should be relevant to the issues, and they should be.
To the findings, right?
They should be, yeah, they should be a nexus to them, not just, throw out a condition just for the sake of the condition, but it should be related to the issues, like with stormwater. So with stormwater, let me just explain a couple things. For a single-family residence, a use by right, or even this, a stormwater drainage plan or analysis is not a requirement.
Sure.
It has to be constructed in a way that it takes stormwater away from the structure. But if there's a particular issue with stormwater at that location, that might be a relevant issue. I'm not sure how you articulate a condition if you say they have to provide a stormwater management plan by a licensed civil engineer. That's a pretty big ask on a single-family residence.
On something that's not required in the first place, right?
It's not required in the first place,
Okay.
and it requires there's a lot of expense to doing that.
Thousands of dollars to do that.
There might be something that's less onerous that deals with that issue. Parking, one reason they aren't setting it back and having more parking is because it costs more money to build more concrete driveway, I'm sure. I think I'm not sure how close the edge of the roadway is to the front property line, but according to the site plan, there's actually, I don't know if there's a sidewalk on that side of the street. There is, okay. So you have to be careful of that. You don't want to block the sidewalk with parking. But there might be more parking on the site plan than DCI because of how the distance of the lot line to the edge of the roadway. Just something to think about.
Well, it says 20 feet from the front porch to the lot line.
Yeah, I guess the point I'm making is if there's, say, over 20 feet from the front property line to the edge of the roadway, as long as someone's not blocking the sidewalk, there might be, the parking on here might be
You're saying they
understated.
can park on the gate.
Well, the argument is, per code, this gives you 2 parking stalls per unit.
Correct.
Unfortunately, they are correct. You got the jockeying around of vehicles and all this that happens at every home, right? So whoever's in the garage, somebody's gonna end up parking on the street because they're tired of jockeying the vehicle around. That happens. That just flat happens. But per code, they're meeting the requirements. They're allowed 2 per unit, so there's 4 cars there.
But this is a discretionary decision that's
Yeah.
been made here, so
Mhm.
if something is relevant and there's a nexus, there's a relationship between the condition and the issue at hand, you can go beyond code, and I don't wanna suggest you do that with
No,
parking,
no.
I'm not suggesting, I'm just saying that it's not off limits. I'm sure the applicant wouldn't want me to throw that out there, but that's just the reality of it. If it's relevant, if it's legally defensible because it's connected to one of the issues, you can address it somewhere.
But then that goes to character of the neighborhood, because it's basically on a 70-foot wide lot to put two, how wide does a parking pad have to be for 2 cars, Bill?
It looks to me like this driveway is gonna be, is this driveway 20 foot wide? And it's hard to tell by that either.
It appears to be about 20 feet wide,
20 feet.
or 18 feet wide.
But to have park 2 cars side by side,
Yeah,
you would need double that.
need 18 feet.
You need 18 feet, so that would be 36 feet out of a 70-foot.
Excuse me, so these are. the
I
driveway-
understand.
Okay,
Please,
I'm
may I
sorry.
finish my
Yeah,
thought?
yeah, sure.
Thank you. That would be 36 feet out of a 70-foot wide lot of concrete. And is that something that we want to have? Two-car pads, a 2-car pad for each lot would require more concrete in the front of the houses. And is that, I mean, there again, it's the argument for the character of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So,
And I was gonna ask you two a question, I mean, three, you've been doing this long. What constitutes character of the neighborhood? Because apparently, we seem to not want to include the fact that it's a historical neighborhood as being part of the character of the neighborhood.
but it's not a historic neighborhood. There's a clear definition in the code of a historic neighborhood, and that's something that's either in a housing or a historic opportunity overlay, or someplace that's registered on the National Historic
Okay,
Register.
so.
No designation is.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah, so let me dial back and not go as far as the designation.
Okay.
But I'm saying, when you say the character of the neighborhood, right? The homes themselves are a certain age, built in a certain period of time, right? And does that not factor into defining the character of any neighborhood? That's a genuine question. Right? If I move into a home where every house has clay tiles, right? I'm just asking, every house has clay tiles, and for some reason, someone came and put a development that had Adobe homes, right? In Kansas. Well, guess what? It happened, right? There's a whole neighborhood of that, right? And I come in, and there's a lot available. I'm gonna put shingles
Okay.
on there, right? I'm allowed to do that, right?
Absolutely.
You're absolutely allowed to do that, right?
Unless there's a homeowner's, unless there's a declaration of restrictive covenants, or it's in some type of,
Yeah. Should the residents have to do that just to protect what is to me and to the naked eye, the character of the neighborhood that I'm driving by? I'm a layman. I don't need to have been on the planning commission. I don't need to have been a developer. I'm just a layman driving by the street, and I'm describing, oh, look what the character of the neighborhood looks like. And why would we not include that in these considerations, that these are the type of homes that are here? Why should that be excluded?
I think what they're talking about when they're saying character, they're talking about a duplex, because you cannot stop someone from building a slab house there.
Sure.
You cannot stop someone from putting any kind of shingle they want on there.
Yeah.
You can't stop someone from putting metal siding on there. There's lots of things that someone can do on that lot that has nothing to do with any of the other houses there. I think what they're saying by the character is that it's a duplex.
a 3-bedroom duplex with a single-car garage. Gonna add a lot of, to answer your, just to make a comment on your question, but we can't, we're not a we're the planning commission.
I know,
We have to make
but
these-
yeah,
We
I
have
know.
to make
I
these
know.
decisions,
Yeah.
so.
But what I'm saying is, for people who are sitting out there.
Yes.
Yeah, people who've bought a home, somebody coming into Ottawa and saying, where's a good neighborhood? I'm looking for a neighborhood that is A, B, C, D. Oh, it's that area over there, and they purchase their home over there, right?
Well, first of
And-
all, we wouldn't tell them that because that's against fair.
Oh, I know, yeah.
You're never gonna hear that from a realtor, so.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I know. But those considerations do take place, right?
It does.
Yeah.
But that's the purpose of the historic districts, and they're vehicles to protect.
Yeah.
But most people, don't know about them, and then most people, when they do look into them, don't want to do that. But again, at Rockwood, we did say when they wanted to add more bedrooms to the care
nursing.
center out there, we denied that, and we denied it because that would change the character of the neighborhood. So it's not a precedent for us to say, as we did on Maple Street, as we did in Rockwood, that we're not going to approve the conditional use permit because it's not in.
We put conditions on that one, and then the developer withdrew the application. Right, I think if I remember what we did, remember that?
We put conditions on
Yeah.
it. The conditions were that he couldn't change the character. One of the
Okay.
conditions was he
Oh,
couldn't
okay,
change
yeah,
the
yeah,
character of
yeah,
the
true,
neighborhood.
true.
So I guess,
Yeah.
we've got to move on.
Sure.
But the golden factors, they addressed some of the concerns in your findings. Did you have that written down? Did you have that typed out when you went through the, could we, again, and I hate to do this, but could we continue this? You submit your findings as written, submit your testimony as written testimony. Give us some time to have staff look at that. Maybe the staff, after looking at that, because you had some valid points, might change their findings, and then, again, we could go, I don't know, what I'm trying to do is get us to someplace where we can move to the next item, so we can get home before
Midnight?
midnight. Yeah. So, comments? Guys, what do you want to do?
I just think that enough issues have been raised. However, we do have to limit our comments to the findings. And so you did say, so I go to what the director said about a nexus. I think there are a few issues that have been raised
Yeah.
that are related to some of the findings.
Mr. Kane?
No, I agree with Commissioner Winaka. I think traffic is a huge concern. I think the driveway entrance is a concern. I think stormwater is a huge concern. I mean, our streets are terrible at draining anyways in this town.
Yes.
Some days. So I think if we add more runoff into our streets, especially in that neighborhood, I think it's just gonna add more problems.
We can't think about that, though, because someone purchased this lot to build a house on it, whether it's a house or a duplex, multifamily. You can't go back to the person that purchased this lot and say, you can't build on this because of stormwater. We can't do that.
What's your pleasure, Commissioner Crowley?
Lots of good comments.
Would you like to?
Well, we're not voting on this tonight anyway.
Well, should we not?
We
or
are,
should
we would be. We'd be voting to accept the findings. I mean, this is, after the public hearing, there are motions that you make to accept the findings as your own or to modify it, right? I mean, this is an actionable item tonight, isn't it?
Mr. Chairman, we had a study session on this. This is a regular meeting, so normally, we're recommending that a decision be
Yeah,
made or.
the minutes
this
don't reflect that. I
decision- and
mean, the agenda doesn't reflect it. Typically, after every public hearing,
That's
we
where
have.
I'm confused, because it doesn't say.
Yeah,
that.
it doesn't have it, but yeah, we're to either approve or deny or make findings of our own, and then to recommend approval or denial to the city commission if we take action on it. So, but what I'm getting is, really, nobody here is ready to take action on this.
Oh, well, except me.
And you're ready to,
Oh, I'll say let's go through the findings, and I'll tell you where I stand on each one of these findings. I'm happy to do that.
okay.
I don't know about, but if the majority wanting for some sort of a continuance, I'm a team player. But me, yeah, the day I don't have an opinion, call a coroner.
I'm with you.
Well,
So,
giddy up. I don't know whether that's a correct planning commissioner chairman's
right?
term, but
but
Read your
yeah.
findings.
Yeah, you know, and, I struggle with number two, to be honest. I'm struggling with number three, based on what I've heard. You know, the undue burden. Yeah, that was the city's findings, but we're finding out that we're finding out different from the residents on number three. I think those are my big ones. Then, of course, then there are the list of other concerns. Just based on those two, my vote, if I may, just tell you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Is no.
Is it, would it be to deny, your vote would be to
Deny.
deny?
Deny, yes.
I would be denying with him as well for the character of for the duplex in the neighborhood. That's that's the gist of it. At the end of the day, like Commissioner Crowley is saying, we're not gonna, the new houses aren't, even our new single-family homes aren't going to be within the character of these neighborhoods, these older neighborhoods. You're just not going to do it. But the duplex is just completely out in left field.
Okay, so we've got to have a reason to deny it. So that means we would have to change some of the findings and then adopt the findings that are ours. So what I'm hearing is, we have a problem with density. We have a problem with, what's number two?
Number two is whether the location of the proposed use is compatible to other land uses in the surrounding
So we have a
neighborhood.
problem with number two.
And then I have a problem with three, whether the
three?
proposed use places an undue burden on the existing transportation, utility, and service facilities in
For
the
this
area
particular
affected.
area, that's
For
strong.
this, yeah.
Okay.
If so, whether such additional
And
facilities
that would
can
include
provide.
stormwater and traffic and all of the
Yes.
concerns that
Yes.
we've expressed and that we've heard
Yeah.
expressed tonight.
Yeah.
Anything else, Commissioner Crowley or Commissioner Kane?
I just gotta say again, you gotta be careful what you ask for or wish for, because again, someone could go in there and build a bigger house with no garage, and then the parking would be even worse.
I don't disagree with that at all.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
unfortunately.
no one could stop them from doing that.
Yeah.
And build it closer to the property
To the
lines.
property line too, yeah. I just feel like, yeah. I
And it
just
could be
feel-
a rental.
And it could be a rental.
But at some point, I think we kind of have to compartmentalize to a certain degree, right? Say, okay, here, for this moment, this is what's in front of us, right? And you're right. I mean, you're right, that there's the flip side of the coin. But for what's in front of me, I'm restricting my comments for what I'm looking at right now.
Okay, well, here's where we are. I would entertain a motion of some type on the findings.
Okay, let's see if the wording is here. We used to have the wording. We don't have the wording.
What I'm hearing you say is you would modify the number two and number three to say that they're not compatible.
Yes,
So that would be probably the gist of the
yes, that's the gist
motion would
of
be
my.
to
Yeah.
move that we accept the city findings, except number two and three, and
Three.
we change those to whatever verbiage you want to put in there.
Unless there's anyone else with additional findings.
I agree with the number two. That's the only one I agree with. I
Okay.
agree with the change in number two.
Okay, well, let's have a motion of some kind.
So do you want us to do both or each one, so that, others have an opportunity to vote on each one? Because if we put the two together, he's in agreement with just one out of the two.
Okay, so.
What's your pleasure, sir?
Let me borrow your.
Yeah.
Okay, so. I haven't found your findings yet, I'm sorry.
Page 9.
Page, all right, so starting on page 8. And we're just gonna have a voice vote. We're not gonna have a roll call on these because we're just trying to get the consensus so we can make a motion. Does anybody have anything, see anything that needs to be changed on finding number one?
No, I think it's fine.
We're gonna go through these kind of fast, so, number two.
I do.
You disagree
I
that
disagree
it's
with-
not compatible?
I
Yeah,
don't
it's not
believe it
compatible.
fits.
Okay, so we disagree on number two. Is that the consensus of the group?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, number three, whether the proposed use places undue burden on the existing transportation utility service area affected, if so, what such facilities can be provided?
I disagree with the finding.
I disagree as well. I do believe that it will add unnecessary traffic and
I think any structure would affect the traffic, and we can't stop any structure. So I agree with this.
And I tend to agree with this too, because, but just because of the fact that other structures could be built on there that would be more onerous to all of the more square footage of roof, more square footage of concrete.
And I understand,
More
Regis, what
cars.
you're saying, that this
I
is
do
what's
too.
in front of us. But
I
if
do.
someone else come with a single-family house, it's not going in front of anyone.
That's correct.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
only thing we could do is number two.
Okay, number four, we're gonna go through them all, guys.
Yep.
Number four, is there any comments on number four or concerns? Number five, length of time the subject property to remain vacant.
Irrelevant.
Number six, is the property suitable for a proposed conditional use? And if we're gonna say number one is, or number two is, I would say that number six, we have to disagree with number
I
six.
disagree with six.
We're saying the character of the community doesn't make the property suitable for the proposed use.
Correct.
And what this is saying is that it's large enough.
Right, that's how I
It's
read
not
it.
going back to would it fit with the character, it's saying it's large
Well,
enough.
that's not what I'm reading, Bill. That's whether the applicant's property is suitable for the
The
proposed
finding says
conditional
the
use.
site is large enough for proposed duplex.
They
The
chose
finding
to
right
go.
there says that.
Right,
Yeah.
right, but we're disagreeing with those. Well, that's what I'm saying, is I'm disagreeing with those findings. If we're gonna disagree on number two, then we just about have to disagree with this one. I don't think that in that neighborhood, that this site is big enough for a duplex.
If you go by the city standards, it is big enough, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, so you disagree with that, okay. So number seven, the recommendation of professional staff. Staff recommends a conditional use permit. So so what I'm hearing is that we disagree with that we're not going to recommend. Correct. Correct, okay.
Correct.
Number eight, the proposed conditional use would be in conformance to and further enhance the implementation of the city's comprehensive plan. I don't think we can say that it doesn't, because part of the city's comprehensive plan is to provide housing. Whether the proposed conditional use, if it complies with all the conditions upon which the approval is made contingent, will not adversely affect the property in the area affected. And from a professional standpoint, I don't think that it would, but from a emotional standpoint, it may. But from a professional standpoint, adding a duplex is not gonna devalue the property.
That's correct.
It's not gonna do it.
I agree. It doesn't, and I'll go on record saying the same thing.
Yeah.
The duplexes do not devalue the neighborhood. It's just, this is more of an emotional finding for us here.
Number 11, as for solid waste disposal facilities, including sanitary landfills, blah, 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 blah. We don't have any problems with that, do we? Okay, so we have problems with at least number 2. Some of us have problems with number 6 and number 8, the one that says where they recommended it.
Seven.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Can I add to something?
Absolutely.
So, number 7, recommendations of staff. Staff is recommending that it be approved.
Right. Yeah. But we're disagreeing with that, Roy.
Yeah.
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 Yes, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Now, we've gone through all of them. We know which ones we disagree with. What do we do for a motion? This is on findings.
Yeah, so what staff asked us to do is to either say, give a thumbs up on approving the project or not, based on the findings, right?
Our three choices are to accept the findings as written, to modify the findings to our own, or to deny the findings, and then we can
And
revert
the
it back to
findings
staff.
as a whole.
No, we can make exceptions on findings, on a certain number of findings, and is there a minimum number of findings that we have to disagree with in order to deny the application? Is there something, do I remember something in the regulations about that?
The term is factors.
Factors.
It's not criteria.
Okay, factors.
So when something's a factor, it's a factor. It doesn't mean that you have to find the affirmative on every one of them. They're factors for consideration. That's been my
Okay.
interpretation about how the law is supposed to work in these cases.
Okay.
So what's your recommendation from where we go from here?
Well, I think what I'm hearing is you don't accept the findings as written. You can state in your motion that there's consensus that findings, what, 268, whatever they are.
Yeah. 267.
You disagree with them, and there's a lot of discussion about why. I don't think you need to articulate that in detail. And then from there, make a recommendation on whether you recommend approval or not. But
First, we need a motion and a second, and
Yeah.
approval of the motion or denial of the motion. So
Yeah.
now we're gonna go back and we're gonna sit here and wait for somebody to make a motion.
So we're gonna make a motion, I'm gonna make a motion to deny the approval, but deny the staff's approval,
Deny the staff findings
Fine.
the staff's findings,
Yeah.
based on,
based on our commission's
Consensus?
consensus of not agreeing with items 2, 6, and 7.
factors 2, 6, and 7.
Finding, yeah. I second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, would you call the roll?
Member Crowley?
Yes.
Member Maines?
Yes.
Chairperson Lantis?
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Wanika?
Yes.
Member Kane?
Yes.
Member Elmer and Member Stressen are not present.
Okay. Now, do we need, since we've denied the findings, do we need to have a motion to, since there are no findings, are we recommending denial or to the city commission? Do we need that second motion?
yes, I would
Okay.
say yes. You
Okay,
need
then
to-
we need, I'm entertaining a motion to
Accept
recommend to
of-
the city approval or denial of the application.
Mr. Chair, I recommend that we deny the conditional use permit to the city.
City commission.
Commission.
I second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, would you call the roll?
Member Crowley?
No.
Member Maines?
Yes.
Chairperson Lantis?
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Wanika?
Yes.
Member Kane?
Yes.
Member Elmer and Member Stressen are not present.
Okay, then we move to deny it. Okay, we're gonna move on to item number 3, the Coves at Tallgrass, vacation of setbacks for lots 13 through 20, 23 through 27, and other lots or tracts on the final plat, Phase 1, and to vacate pedestrian easements on lots 26 and 30, and other lots or tracts on the final plat, Phase 1, generally located at Blue Stem Drive and Elderberry Lane, southeast of North Davis Avenue and East Wilson Street. And before I open that public hearing, in fact, I'm not going to open that public hearing, because I have a relationship with the builder.
Yeah.
This is the developer that's asking for this vacation. However, I've worked closely with the developer to come up with a way to do this, and I'll be speaking on behalf of the developer as a member of the public. So I'm going to recuse myself. I'll be here for the public hearing. When the public hearing is closed, I'll stay for a couple of minutes and ask if there are any questions for the developer. And if not, I'm going to leave the building and let you guys have your discussion. And Vice Chairperson Wanika will run that, and he will close the meeting. Because I think the only thing Other thing we'd have
That's
is.
the only thing left, other than announcements, yeah.
So anyway, so I'm going to grab my stuff and go to the audience.
You gonna hand me the mallet?
And boy, am I going to hand you the mallet. After all the trouble you gave us, am I going to hand you the mallet?
You got the gavel down.
All right.
Shall we? So at this point, we'll open the public hearing on concerning the coves at Tallgrass and the vacation of setbacks for lots 13, 20, 23, and 27, and other lots of tracts on the final plat phase 1, and to vacate pedestrian easements on lots 26, 30, and other lots or tracts on the final plat phase 1, generally located on Bluestem Drive and Elderberry Lane, southeast of North Davis Avenue and East Wilson Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be making a presentation. The slides will come up here in just a moment. One thing, can I ask a question if I might? Who was
Sure.
at the last meeting where we discussed this?
I was.
We were
yes.
all there? You were there also?
Was this the last one we just had in May?
Where we discussed this item?
No, Brian was not.
No.
Okay. Okay, so next slide, please. So this subdivision, the coves at Tallgrass, contains setback lines and pedestrian easements. The zoning of the property is R2 with a housing opportunity overlay. The request is to vacate the setback lines and the pedestrian easements on some but not all of the lots. So one of the first questions that one might ask is why aren't all of the setback lines being proposed to be vacated and the pedestrian easements? And the answer is pretty simple. The applicant does not have control over all of the subdivision. They only have control over the lots that they own. There are a couple of lots and a tract that are owned by the city, and the city has consented to include those in this proposal because it just makes sense to do that. Next slide, please. This is just a picture of the subdivision plat as it's recorded. And actually, no, that's not correct. This is the exhibit by the applicant. It's hard to see it, but it shows the setback lines that would be affected and the pedestrian easement that would be affected. Next slide. Staff created this exhibit just because it's a lot easier to see what's being proposed. So in the legend, lots 29 and 30 are owned by the city. Tract B is owned by the city. The lots highlighted in yellow, we've issued permits, so houses are either under construction or very close to it. The green, the ones highlighted in green, the structure's been built. Houses have been built, we've issued a certificate of occupancy. There's one lot that is highlighted in orange, is outlined by orange. That's a vacant lot. It's owned by the homeowner to the west. It's not part of this proposal. And I'm going to have to refer to my report to be able to explain the rest of this because I can't read the screen very well. Okay, so there's an arced line or a curvilinear line that's in blue. That's the pedestrian easement that's proposed to be vacated, and it includes a sidewalk that's already been built. So then you can see that there is a line, a red line, and where the red line is solid, that indicates that it's being proposed to be vacated. And then there are dash lines that are not under the control of the applicant. And so those are not part of the proposal.
So that's towards the end of our package.
So in your staff report,
Yeah.
it's this page,
Right here. Right.
it's that page. So there's a lot of potential for confusion about this, and that's why we created this exhibit, and I'm going into a lot of detail with it. Next slide, please. So this slide shows you the difficulty someone would have in building a house on each of these lots. And if you look at lot 17, the rear setback that applies is the setback for the R2 housing opportunity overlay district. It's 15 feet, side setback is 5 feet. But with the setback line as proposed, it leaves a very small building envelope, approximately 35 feet wide and 45 feet deep. Building envelope is that area on the lot where you can build the house, where you can place the house. So if you look at the call-out box on the bottom right, what that shows you is the setback on the west lot line goes as far back as 70 feet, and on the east lot line, it's 65 feet. So it's really an unusually large setback. Next slide, please. This is at the other end of the subdivision, kind of at the west end of the subdivision, and this just an example of a lot that's difficult because of its shape and the constraints on it. Again, this is lot 47. Rear setback is 15 feet. Side setback requirement is 5 feet. It leaves you with a triangular building envelope, approximately 15 feet wide at the rear, 57 feet wide at the front, and I think that says 80 feet from front to back. I'm having a hard time reading that.
It does.
Okay. Point is, it's hard to build on this lot, and the setback lines make that even more difficult. Next slide, please. Okay, this is just to show you the pedestrian easements. This is a view looking looking east from near the west entrance to the subdivision off of Davis. Next slide. So this is looking from the other direction and from further up in the air. So this shows you the location of the existing sidewalk and the pedestrian easements that are proposed to be vacated. Point is not all of the pedestrian easements are proposed to be vacated. It's just this area right here, shown here.
Yeah, it's unusually far from the street.
It is.
Yeah.
Yep. Next slide. So what the builder is proposing to do, and this is reflected in the conditions of approval that are recommended, the builder will replace the existing sidewalk with a new sidewalk in the street right-of-way. The builder is proposing to do that, or the applicant's proposing to do that, even though that sidewalk is in front of lots that the owner does not own. So the whole point of this is this ensures that there's not going to be a gap in the sidewalk. So the way that'll work is the builder will take out a building permit, and they will at some point remove that sidewalk, but no sooner than when they have a building permit. And then prior to them getting a certificate of occupancy, they will replace the sidewalk in the right-of-way. Just to be clear, sidewalks are typically located in the right-of-way. They're not located on private property. They're typically located in the street right-of-way. So this is really more typical in how it works. I will say, too, is that it's a more direct route for the pedestrian. It's less of a, the shortest line between 2 points is a straight line, not a curved line. Next slide, please. I'm going to go back and just show you something if I could. Could you go back a couple slides, please? Let me see, where's the best slide? That one exhibit. The next slide.
The other direction.
Advance a couple more. Yeah. There, right there. So I don't have a pointer, but if you can see where Blue Stem intersects with Elderberry, and there's a sidewalk that's in a pedestrian easement that sets back from the right-of-way some distance. One of the conditions that's recommended is that when the houses are built, that if there's a driveway or a parking space, it needs to be 20 feet long as measured from the back of the sidewalk. There was a lot of discussion about that. A lot of questions arose in the last meeting. I actually tried to create an exhibit tonight to explain this better, and it probably would have just created more confusion. Just with the exhibit I was creating. But that's the purpose of that, is so when there's parking,
Cars don't block
the sidewalk, right. Okay, so if you could go to the last slide, please. All right, so the recommendation is approval of the requested vacations, subject to the following conditions to be included in the ordinance adopted by the City Commission. So for all lots affected by the vacation, any parking stalls or driveways shall have a length of 20 feet or more behind the sidewalk to prevent cars and trucks from blocking the public sidewalk. Second condition, the owner of lots 27 and 28 shall complete the installation of the sidewalk in the right-of-way abutting lots 26 through 31 and Track B prior to receiving a certificate of occupancy for the homes on lots 27 and 28. The owner of lots 27 and 28 shall not remove the existing sidewalk across lots 26 through 31 and Track B until issued a building permit for construction of homes on lots 27 and 28. So this, unlike other cases that typically go before you, like a rezoning or a conditional use permit, it doesn't have that long list of factors. There are 3 findings. They're in the staff report. And those findings are due and legal notice has been given. We've advertised the public hearing. We sent notices to everyone in the subdivision. And in addition, everyone within 200 feet of the property affected. In addition to that, the applicant conducted an open house where they invited all those same folks to show up at the open house. None of the neighbors attended the open house. I know of no opposition to this. I had one property owner ask me a question, I explained it, and they were fine with it. And that was someone building a house. Second finding, no private rights will be injured or endangered. The setback lines only affect those lots owned by the applicant and those that are owned by the city. The pedestrian easement, I think we've demonstrated here that there's not going to be a gap in the sidewalk. There's a condition that ensures that that's not going to happen. And all of these folks were informed, and they didn't feel like they were going to be harmed by this, which I was surprised by that, because the folks out there are interested in what's happening around them. The public will suffer no loss or convenience. There's still going to be setbacks. The setbacks will revert to what is required by the zoning classification. The pedestrian access will be maintained. And so this will not harm the public based on what we're recommending, based on the facts of the case. And with that, unless you have any questions, that concludes my remarks.
Thank you. Are there, since we've opened this for public hearing, are there any who are here to speak on this?
Representing the applicant, if I just ask if you had any questions, and I would like to introduce Larry Northrup. Larry is one of the investors on the development side. There's a development side, which is the codes of tall grass, and then there will be a builder side, which is Grand Builders. Grand Builders will actually purchase the lots from the codes of tall grass, 2 totally separate entities, 2 totally separate ownerships, but they'll actually be purchasing the lots and building the homes on it. So this has been an ongoing issue since the codes was developed. The building envelopes, and that's why when they held public auctions on them at the height of the housing shortage, a lot of them didn't sell.
So, I remember.
Because they were basically unbuildable lots, as single lots. There were some people that bought more than one lot, they're gonna build houses on them. But the remaining lots, we were the people that bid on. So we looked at several different ways of doing it. First we looked at variance, can't do a variance. Then we looked at replats. We were gonna replat it, but because there's a separation in the lots aren't contiguous, we would have had to do 5 replats to accomplish what we're accomplishing by asking for this vacation. The purpose of the pedestrian easement was even though it's not required by code, and even though there are houses built out there that will have less than 20 feet between the sidewalk and the garage, we were asked by the new planning director to ensure that that happened. And when I talked to the builder about that, he said, well, some of the lots, if we move the setbacks up, but still had the sidewalk 40 feet into the lot, we were still gonna have, in essence, a 60-foot setback. So he said, well, fine, we'll just move the sidewalk. When you think about the cost of 100 feet of sidewalk, when it's factored over 28 houses in a development, it's not a lot of money per lot. So that was the easiest way for him to handle that situation. We worked with the city staff on how, because there was some concerns from Public Works, and there was some concern from administration on a gap in the sidewalk, and we said, fine. We may not even tear them out when we get the building permits. We'll only tear them out when we get the building permits if we have to tear them out to put the pad in. Otherwise, we'll leave the sidewalk and tear it out and replace it before we get the occupancy. So at most, there might be a 90-day gap or maybe a 120-day gap, but literally that sidewalk goes nowhere. When the development is full, that will be, I'm sure, a very well-used sidewalk, but right now, there's nothing out there. So we don't think it's going to cause any harm to the public to have it under construction for 90 to 120 days. So, and we asked that we not have to put the sidewalk back in until we were ready to put the driveways in for the 2 houses that went on those lots, because if we tore the sidewalk out, put the sidewalk back in, then we'd have to tear the sidewalk back out to put the driveways in. We thought we didn't really want to do that. So,
Sure.
Any questions?
Nope.
I think you guys did a great job just going above and beyond doing with those 2 steps. You put out a public notice and hearing, and you did an open house out there that you didn't have to do. So, great.
And
That's how it cleans up.
Every day, and the
Absolutely.
builders out there almost every day, and nobody's come up to us and had any concerns. And we've talked to the 2 guys that are building out there, and they haven't had any, because the other guys that are building, they haven't had any concerns.
So at this point, the public hearing is still open, and I'm keen to close the public hearing so we can have the dialogue on the other end. Are there any other people here online who would like to speak to this issue? Hearing no one else, we'll close the public hearing, and now let's, commissioners, we can discuss questions for the builder. Any more comments, questions for the representative?
My comment would be I would make a motion to accept the staff's findings as they are.
There is a motion. A second. There's a motion and a second. So I say we co-roll, and would you? Please.
Member Kane?
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Nika?
Yes?
Member Crowley?
Yes.
Member Maines?
Yes.
Fuentes?
Can't vote.
Okay,
Chairperson Fuentes, or you?
Has recused himself.
has recused himself.
Yeah.
And Member Elmer and Member Strassenstein are.
So, we're moving forward.
Yes.
All right. And so then we would entertain a motion to forward the approval, right?
Correct.
Correct. To
Yes.
the city fathers.
Yeah, so your
And the city moms.
the motion would be to make to forward a recommendation onto the city
To the
commission.
to the city commission.
And they
Make
will
the motion to make the recommendation to approve.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Any more discussion on that? Hearing none?
Member Kane?
Yes.
Chairperson Nika?
Yes?
Member Crowley?
Yes.
Member Maines?
Yes.
Chairperson Fuentes has recused himself.
Motion carried. And Ms. Point, We're done, and the chairperson can come back. Yeah, so, there's any other old business that we need to discuss? I think all the comments, we did make some comments when we opened, and some of the things you'll be able to bring back to us.
Yes.
Since there's no business, any new business? We need?
I'll bring up one
Yes,
item,
Commissioner.
which we were just talking about on this duplex issue. As I'm spending more time in town driving around as well, I'm seeing some really, and I was gonna address some things with Public Works, I'll go direct there. But I do see issues in the community with parking on the streets. I see people parking on some of our streets that are as narrow as that over there and parking on both sides. So you wanna talk about it being congested when traffic's trying to get through, delivery trucks, this and that. We do have some issues with parking along our streets, and some of them are marked, some aren't marked. Who knows really what is supposed to happen?
Yeah.
Maybe signs have been taken down and just never put back up, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm going to reach out to Public Works and address some of these things.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of that's a policing issue. If
Yeah.
people are parked in the wrong place.
I'm trying to pay attention, but I don't see signs as
Yeah.
well on Cherry, North
and
Cherry.
It doesn't hurt to remind, I mean, we had that issue at the college, and so they did put 3 signs, and the police, and police presence, I haven't seen a single car violate for months. Because they were gonna tow them away, and
that's more in the public eye.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you get off on some of these side streets, and there's true issues out there.
Yeah.
You know who to contact?
I don't, but that's easy to find out.
Yeah, I'd say contact Dennis Tharp
Yeah.
and Justin McCurdy. Justin McCurdy is the,
Is he in charge of roads and?
he's
thought he
basically
was-
the road supervisor.
Okay.
I believe.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, I know Justin.
Yeah.
Good. Any other new business? All right, announcements. The next regular scheduled Planning Commission study session meeting will be Thursday, June the 30th, 2022 at noon. And the next regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting will be Wednesday, July the 13th, 2022 at 7 p.m. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.